This is a Palisadoes Foundation podcast hosted by Peter Harrison. The Palisadoes Foundation was conceived by a group of Jamaican technology professionals interested in assisting in the continued development of new and existing technologies in Jamaica. The Calico Challenge is our primary annual activity. It is a work-study program where Jamaican students get paid a stipend to work on open-source projects under the guidance of a mentor. Funds are dispersed upon the achievement of predefined milestones. The challenge is jointly managed by Palisadoes, the UWI Computing Society, the UTech IEEE Student Branch, and the Jamaica Computer Society. In this podcast, we interviewed Jordan Jones, who has been involved with the Palisadoes Foundation as both a mentor and a volunteer since its inception in 2015. Welcome to the podcast, Jordan.
Thanks for having me, Peter.
How did you get involved with the Palisadoes Foundation in the first place?
Back when I was in college, which was about 2015, second year, the School of Engineering student rep at the time, Javid Smith, he contacted me and he expressed to me that these persons, he didn't say who explicitly, but he just expressed to me that these persons were looking to get in contact with UTech students to form some kind of coalition around software. And at the time I was head of software for UTech's IEEE student branch. So I just said, sure. And then I got in contact with you, Peter Harrison.
And what does the IEEE student branch do?
So the IEEE student branch is basically extracurricular activities. It's a facilitator of students, and it helps students to facilitate projects they might have. So engineering students, for example, can go to IEEE student branch, maybe propose a project there, maybe an engineering project, and then the student branch now helps those students to carry out those projects. They also offer mentorship for incoming students. On certain occasions, we offer scholarships through the IEEE organization. So it has a lot of different purposes. Our main purpose, though, would be mentorship.
And the IEEE would be the international, what would that be?
Yes, so the IEEE is the International Organization of Standards. IEEE stands for Institute of Electric and Electronic Engineers.
Does the IEEE student branch participate in international competitions, and how has it done in the past?
Yes, we do participate in international competitions. Our major competition, which is the Southeastern Conference, which consists of the 13 eastern states of the U.S. and Jamaica. That's Region 3. So we participate in that conference. And in that conference, students compete in different areas of technology. So they have a software area, a hardware area, ethics, which discusses ethical rules of IEEE. And we also have a technical paper which students can submit technical papers that they're working on. And this competition is held every year around March or April. So in the past, we've actually beaten the US in 2016. Jamaica won for website. Oh yes, we do website as well at Southeastern Conference. We won website competition in 2016. We have always been a main competitor in software and hardware, and we almost won ethics in 2016 as well. So 2016 was a good year.
That's really good to hear. I'm glad to see that Jamaica is excelling in areas that would not traditionally be viewed as areas of excellence.
Definitely.
As a mentor for the Palisadoes Foundation, what do you do? What has it entailed?
So I mentor for 3 projects now. 3 projects this year? Yes. I mentor for Garnet, InfoSet, and middleware. So being a mentor, what I do is I work with students. I work with them to create these things we call milestones, which are just tasks that they need to accomplish, or tasks that they need to fulfill. And a milestone can be anything from creating a different page or implementing a certain functionality. Generally, we try to make it, or I try to make milestones something, I don't want to say too easy, not too easy, but something that will give the students a challenge, something that might push them to go further, let them learn a new area. So that's more or less what being a mentor entails, is really working with students so that they can build out these new features for the different projects. And then through building these different features, then, they gain valuable experience like version control or best practices when using a certain framework like React or Python, Flask, whatever the case may be.
So I'm assuming that the frameworks that you're talking about would be programming standards, what exactly would those be?
Okay, so the frameworks, namely in Garnet is built using React, and React is a JavaScript library made by Facebook. So that would be an example of a framework, but frameworks are not limited to just libraries. Things like programming languages, Python, JavaScript, like I said, and general fundamentals like HTML or CSS.
And so the JavaScript, the HTML, the CSS, those would be technologies that are used for creating actual websites and web pages that people would be often using on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
Now, you've mentioned a number of projects. You've mentioned Garnet, Infoset, and some others. What exactly does each one do?
I guess I should start from Infoset because that's the main one. So Infoset is a really simple time series database / API. It's specifically designed to make collecting time series data super simple. In the beginning of the Calico challenge, Garnet, Infoset, and the middleware were all one project. But over time as the repository grew, it became unmaintainable. So we decided to split those off, which are now known as Infoset, which is the time series database, and Garnet now, which is the front end that visualizes all the data that Infoset has collected. So to recap, basically you collect data with Infoset, and then if you want to see that data, maybe you want to make some charts from it, you do that with Garnet. And then finally, there was a third project that came from the whole conglomerate, which was SwitchMap. I don't mentor for SwitchMap, but SwitchMap is a software that allows you to view network topologies via SNMP. So it was a very big project.
So all of these projects, I'm assuming, were done by Jamaicans, made by Jamaicans, or are these international?
100% Jamaican, with help from the Palisadoes president, of course.
Could you give us an example of time series data? You've mentioned it a number of times,
right,
but I don't think our listeners would necessarily know what that is.
Okay, so time series data, an example of that would be, let's say you wanted to know how your CPU was doing over the past 24 hours. So how Infoset would do this is that you'd install Infoset on your computer and you'd have it collecting data. And the interval at which it collects data, let's say it collects data every 5 minutes. So every 5 minutes, Infoset will go check at your CPU load time and then record that. So at the end of those 24 hours, you have 5-minute increments of data, which span over the series of time. So that's a rough idea of what time series data is. So it's just data over time.
So I'm assuming many listeners could think of an equivalent of this being, for example, having data that would be in a spreadsheet that would then be used to create charts. But in this case, the data would be stored in a database, which would then be viewed as charts on a web page for their usage.
Definitely.
I see. Recently, you visited Silicon Valley as a part of a program with the Palisadoes Foundation. What inspired you to take it on?
So, over the years, since, I started programming, Silicon Valley, to me, has kind of been the center of the action, where everything was happening. That's where all the startups were. And when the opportunity arose to finally go there, I bolted and I couldn't turn it down. So really what inspired me to go to Silicon Valley was that I just had to see what it was like, where the action was and where everything was being done.
And how did you prepare for the visit?
So I prepared for the visit mainly by just pulling up Google Maps, seeing where were points of interest, how close was I to Google, or how far away was I. Basically just looking up landmarks and different sightseeing spots to go, just to kind of plan out what I'd do when I got there.
What were your very first impressions of the area?
I don't know what else did I expect, but when I got there, I was kind of amazed by how much technology was actually integrated into the day-to-day lives of the people living there. So one example of this was we went on a train. I just saw people swiping. The train had a card, like a key card, and they just swiped the card, and then they went on the train, which is not what I was used to. You usually have a teller or something like that.
What companies did you visit and what did you learn from each?
Some of the companies that I visited, some big names, I visited Google. So what I learned at Google, we had a meeting with Kat and Stephanie. I can't remember their last names for the life of me, but we had a meeting with Kat and Stephanie. They were coordinators of Google Summer of Code, the open source program, which Project Calico is modeled after. So what we learned from them was we basically asked them, different questions on how do they keep students interested, what's their best policy for handling milestones. So it was very beneficial because what they were doing was closely aligned to what we were doing, and they gave us some really good insights. After that, we visited Netflix, and we just had a tour of Netflix's, what was it, Santa Clara building? Yeah, Santa Clara location, which was really good. We got to see different boardrooms in Netflix where they discuss the shows, and we got to see the actual Netflix switch that Netflix would deploy to a different country so that you could get Netflix there, deploy to a different ISP, so your ISP could give you Netflix. We got to see different versions of that. After that, we went to Facebook, which is a madhouse in the summer because of interns. Our tour guide there was Mei Chan. She showed us what life was like at Facebook from the point of an intern. She showed us some of the workspaces that some of the engineers work in. And she showed us their open source department, which was really good. After Facebook, we kind of detoured from the whole tech scene, and then we went to this company called Therma. Therma is a company that makes air ducts and piping for different buildings. I think their main focus is data centers. And to add to that, Therma is actually making pipes for Colivore. So that was pretty cool to see because we got to see the pipes in Colivore after that. After Therma, we visited a fellow Jamaican at Cisco, Larkland, and Larkland showed us a sneak peek of something Cisco was working on, which is, I can't disclose that now, but it was pretty good. After Cisco, we went to a subsidiary of Cisco, Meraki, and our tour guide there was also Jamaican, so it was really good to see Jamaicans in different positions all over Silicon Valley and all over the different companies in Silicon Valley.
How has the trip influenced your views on technology?
So, before the trip, I have to admit that I didn't really know what was out there, but after the trip, my worldview has just been blown wide open. The trip showed me that, there are so many different ways to solve different problems, and just the different technologies and the different methodologies that I've seen at each company has just really expanded my worldview.
And how do you think this new perspective will shape your career in Jamaica?
So this new perspective definitely gives me insight in, I guess it kind of broadens my thinking in terms of, how to approach certain problems or kind of look at what other people are doing. Or now I can look at what people in Silicon Valley have done and see how I can use that to apply to problems that I might have or to create solutions from that.
And how is the experience different from what you expected?
So what I didn't expect was so many Jamaicans to be in such high-ranking places all over Silicon Valley. I expected maybe one or two, but we are we are all over the place there, and that's what really stood out.
You've spoken a lot about technology and your career plans. What did you find interesting about life in Silicon Valley that was not related at all to this plan?
Interestingly enough, I know that I just said Jamaicans are all over the place, but in Silicon Valley, what struck me was that there were not a lot of black families or black engineers. In most places that we went, we were the only people of color. So that really stood out to me.
And I know that you did a lot of sightseeing. What did you manage to do, and what would you recommend others to do?
First and foremost, you need to go to San Francisco. That place is an experience all on its own. Just going to San Francisco is an experience. And then after you go to San Francisco, you need to go to the Golden Gate Bridge because that's where we went. And the Golden Gate Bridge is really a marvel, especially on a clear day when you can see all of it. We also went to this world-class aquarium in Monterey, which was just phenomenal and huge. So San Francisco, Golden Gate Bridge, Monterey. If you're feeling adventurous, like we were, we went to Napa, which is wine country where they make all the wine. You can go there. That is spectacular as well. So recapping, San Francisco, specifically in San Francisco, Lombard Street, because that is an experience as well. Golden Gate Bridge, Monterey, and Napa in wine country. Don't go to Sacramento because you will just melt.
I'm assuming that's because it's hot in the summertime.
Yes, it is definitely hot. Even too hot for Jamaicans.
You're a volunteer for the Palisadoes Foundation. In what ways could listeners contribute to the Calico Challenge, the Palisadoes Foundation, and beyond?
Okay, so if you're not of a technical background, please donate to the Calico Challenge. Please donate to the Palisadoes Foundation. We literally survive off donations. So if you're not of a technical background, you can help us in that way. We also need more volunteers. We need more volunteers for administrative staff, blog posts. So if you're a writer or if you're maybe a social media manager, you can always volunteer to the Palisadoes Foundation. If you are of a technical background, however, all our projects are open source. You can take a look at the source. If you want to make modifications, if you see an error somewhere, make a pull request, contact the maintainers.
What would you say would be the biggest benefit for students who have participated in the Calico Challenge? As a mentor, you must have seen many students being involved in this thing and seen many ways in which they have benefited.
Yeah, so a couple of ways I've seen students benefited. I've seen students at the beginning of the Calico Challenge not following convention, not really following best practices, kind of finding it difficult to collaborate with other people. And at the end of the challenge, I've seen where people have progressed so far to match international standards and to be able to collaborate with any and everyone. So those are two of the main benefits. Some other benefits I've seen was that through the Calico Challenge, students have actually been able to get very well-paid internships.
Well, thanks a lot, Jordan, for letting us and the listeners to the Calico Challenge and Palisadoes podcast know a little bit more about what's being done.
All right, no doubt. Thanks, Peter. Thanks for having me.